show of hands, I asked this last week. Repeat offenders? Look at this. It must be 40%, something along those lines. Again, I'm echoing what Ann said. Thank you for coming to tonight. No rain this time, so it's pretty straightforward. I got a couple of questions last week about who I am and what Dent's about. And so real quickly, my social media handle is Creative Instigator, Radical Optimist, and Pal of the Arts. I'm a longtime museum curator. I was the former chief curator at SECA when it was still privately owned. A number of other museums around the country. Been in Winston-Salem since 1999. Dent, Creative Reuse Center and Art Laboratory. It's more of an art laboratory right now. Creative Reuse Centers function like thrift stores. The oldest and the largest in the United States. It's a scrap exchange right here in North Carolina. It's about 35 years old and has a $3 million budget and 30 employees. Owns half a strip mall. We don't have a brick and mortar. Eventually we might work that way, but we like the idea of collaboration, working with other entities, and that sort of brought us around to working with the public library on this series. Creative approach. It's making a dent and the waste stream, one art project at a time, is the short version of our mission statement. So I saw this and I thought, this is perfect. This is what mixed doubles is all about, right? The idea is not observed and there's no hope for it. We have to thank our sponsors. Thank you very much, the Thomas S. Keenan Institute for the Arts and the Winston-Salem Foundation for supporting mixed doubles. We couldn't do it without you. Round of applause, please. And this is a free event, and we don't make a penny on it. And if you are inclined, you can certainly make a donation to our cause if you like what we do. I also want to say that Julian Patton, who's in the corner over there, with this a photo booth, is with us tonight as a special guest. So make sure that you do single or group photographs with her, free of charge, and so she'll send those to you on your phone. She has a table of props if you want to get giggly and silly and do your thing. So a little bit about tonight's event. The second of three. I'm going to introduce Christine Toole first. Samantha will go on first, but I will give her the second introduction. Christine is an artist, a maker, a mother, a mechanic. Make sure you ask her about her Corvette at the Q&A. Who has not only gone and participated in the giant non-linear thing known as Burning Man for what, 12 times? 12 times. Burning Man asks you to participate, not just be a witness. Christine has contributed to the success of some of the Playa's best artists, and that includes showing up, spinning a wrench, running wires, doing whatever it takes. She's a cog in the wheel, but a very important one. That's Christine. Samantha Fox Winship, we're very happy to have this pairing. She's farm mother, queen, and visionary of illuminating light, according to the website. And she likes to get her hand dirty and look glamorous at the same time. And I think that's really important. She's been referred to in articles as the lipstick queen of farming. But more importantly, I think her work combines farming, holistic remedies, beekeeping, and I would add entrepreneur, business executive, community-minded teacher, and educator. And she does significant work empowering women and people of color and is an inspiration to many, no doubt to you tonight after you hear what she has to say. Samantha, please come to the front.
Well, I'm really excited to be here today. And one thing I've learned when I got into beekeeping was number one, beekeeping is 100% about community. It's about working together as a community. And when I went outside and I opened up my first hive, I saw all of the bees inside of the hive working together, and they all looked so happy. I could see the little wings, they were like flapping, and I'm like, they've got to be happy to be moving around like that, and plus having honey inside of the hive. It was a little bit magical to the point it made me cry. I was so taken back at how beautiful it was when they were working together. It made me say, why can't people do this? Bees have a brain the size of a sesame seed, but yet they can figure out how to work together. And when they're doing that, they're working inside of these little geometrical shapes. Look how close they are. It's right beside each other. So somebody might be laying the egg in one cell, and then you go to the next cell, somebody might be storing honey right there beside each other. They're doing all of that work. So I just want to put at the forefront that beekeeping is number one, 100% about community and working together. And that was just one of the most fantastic things that I found out about the whole operation and how it worked. It made me really reflect on community, things I saw growing up. I saw somebody who I would walk down the street and they would say, wait a minute, what are you doing down here? You need to go home. You've gotten a little bit too far on your bike. And that was a community that I saw growing up, and I would love to continue to see some of those same traditions as time goes on. It's so important. And I go a lot around and talk about honeybees, and one thing that I've learned every place that I go is that your story is your story. No matter where you go, everything that you go through, you experience, it makes you exactly who you are. So you should be proud of that, right? So my story in beekeeping is one that I find to be pretty interesting, because when I went into my first beekeeping meeting, of course, no one there had on red lipstick. I was pretty disappointed when I came in and realized, who was I going to talk to about what kind of beekeeping fashion we needed to do? It was pretty disappointing. So I said, you know what? I didn't know what I was doing at all. I went and I said, I'm farming right now. What makes sense to me? I need bees. I had no idea I was going on to find pretty much a new life, a total new life. It was totally out of the left field for me. I was a makeup artist. I was traveling around, going to New York Fashion Week. I had a great career as an artist. And then here came the bees. They changed my life. I learned that beekeeping was a sacred practice. I felt like, why was this hidden from me? Why didn't anybody come up and say, you could be a beekeeper? I didn't see that. So I had to become my own trailblazer. I had to make my own way through beekeeping. And it wasn't hard. I really have a big personality. I'm able to express myself and what I feel, articulate myself, and I knew that it needed diversity. So I kept sitting down at that meeting and I stayed there. And I said, you know what, today, this is going to be something that's going to be different when I get done. It's Black History Month. Of course, I want to acknowledge that. And I wanted to say, I wanted to create my own her story. I wanted to be a part of that history, because when I looked in the books, I didn't see any history that pertained to a Black person beekeeping. It wasn't there. It really honestly felt hidden. I was like, I need to change this. And I started putting on my crowns, my lipstick, because I wanted, when children to see it, I wanted them to be like almost a Disney character, and it would imprint in their minds. And they would be able to say, I can do that. Representation is important. I taught my son how to beekeep. I'm a first generation beekeeper. So I just recently became a grandmother, And during that process, one day I'll take that bee frame and I'll put it in my grandson's hand. And that honey frame will keep going down the line. It's beautiful, right? It's about building a legacy. It's about continuing things or building things that you might have never had a grasp to do. But guess what? When you keep showing up, change happens. You can be the change that you want to see. I saw my grandmother, a little Black history fact. My grandmother was the first Black female probation officer in Wayne County, North Carolina. She was a trailblazer. My grandmother was probably about 4'11", and I couldn't imagine her first day walking in that door. I imagine she was a different woman at work than she was when she was making the sweet potato pie. But I'm sure, you know what? I think about how many women after that day walked in the door after her. And it just made me say, wow, that's really making change. She walked through that door and behind her, probably, if we're in 2024, maybe thousands of women. So I've got to keep preserving culture. And through that, I found out beekeeping was one of the best things that you can do to preserve culture and history. Farming is great, but beekeeping has that sweet reward of honey that heals. You can take the wax, you can make a lotion or a salve. I make tonics. I'm healing my community through traditions that I saw growing up. I saw my grandmother do the same exact thing when she wasn't a probation officer. She came home and she took care of 9 children. She was a queen bee. She played that role well too, and it made me want to be exactly like some of the things I saw her doing, being a trailblazer, a queen bee who's taking care of her community. And my products, they've taken care of a lot of people in this community. And that handheld touch that's made with love when you get a product is amazing. I don't ever want to lose that. I don't want Amazon to make my elderberry syrup. And I don't want Walmart making my honey. I want to go to a neighbor and just kind of be old school and barter and say, hey, you got a cup of sugar? I could trade you for some honey. Those things are super important. And it's something that I would definitely like for you all to understand, again, that my story is my story. I hope my story resonates with you and you teach some of your grandkids about beekeepers who are like me, who wear lipstick, a little sassy, but not too much. It's super important because the future depends on bees. Humans, bees, and plants have an interconnected relationship. We all need each other to survive. If we don't have bees, we don't have food. It's simple. The small things make a huge impact. Little things make a big difference. So during my journey, I found a bunch of cultures who do beekeeping in different ways, and it was super amazing. One in particular was a papyrus that was found by Henry Salt, and it was landed inside of the British Museum. On that papyrus, it was written, "The god Ray wept, and the tears from his eyes fell on the ground and turned into a bee. The bee made his honeycomb and busied himself with the flowers of every plant. And so wax was made, and also honey, out of the tears of Ra. Every day the rising of the sun in the east was a symbol of Ray's creation. And when I went and started my own hive, guess what I did? I looked for the east. I was doing some of those same traditions that have gone on for centuries and passed down from culture to culture. So it's good for me to highlight my view, and my presence is important. It's important to see a woman, a Black woman, a mother, talking about bees, because we don't get to be in that space very often. So when we do, we need everybody on board with the message. The bees, plants, and humans are all connected. So they do a behavior called festooning. And when they do that, they make a framework together. They bond their legs together and they build. It looks like they're have a chain gang, like an army, just together, working together. And that framework work is so beautiful because, again, it reminds me of community. It reminds me of bonding together, working together. And these bees are, like I said, are pretty smart with how they work together and make things beautiful. They turn to each other, they turn to the plants, and they go back and they literally work them little selves until they die. All of their work is centered toward storing that honey, protecting the queen, and building everything together inside of that hive box. And it's generations of bees inside of there. One queen bee can lay thousands of eggs in one day. So I always ask the kids when I go to the school, do you want to be the queen bee still? And all of them say no. So they think it's just a cute cliche term, I'm the queen bee. But the queen bee has a very bad, she never leaves the hive after going out and mating once. And the rest of her time is spent inside of there laying eggs every single day. But the bright side is she does get somebody to feed her. So I'm pretty sure that makes her very happy. So today has been amazing. And I'm super thankful to be able to share some of my story with you all because, again, it's important to be vulnerable, talk about the things that make an impact, and share with each other. Those are the things that make for a brighter day. Look how happy everybody is. It's like the energy of a bee. It's like the buzz is going around the room. The energy is flowing. Everybody's happy. And look how small you can be to be a beekeeper. So this year, I definitely hope to see some of you all inside of some suits. And this will be the future bee suit for my grandson here. So everybody look out for that and watch how we keep growing as beekeepers here in Winston-Salem. So I appreciate you all again. I think my 20 minutes is up. Is that right?
You're getting close. You got a few more.
I got a few more?
Yeah.
Okay. I was trying, he said very strict with the on the end, so I wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing. So, of course, this hive box here is where the bees live inside of. This is some wax here. This is a smudge wand that I make by hand. And those are some of the cultural things I was talking about that are so important about preserving, like that hand wrap. This is actually juniper. And it has a dahlia inside of it. So when you get done, just come by and check out some of this awesome stuff. This is one. It shows you a little bit how dirty the job is. It's got pollen inside of it. These are some of my tools that I would use. And everything definitely is on display. I think they have some of the honey in the back that you all can sample. And another thing I wanted to mention was health and wellness is a community topic as well. I've spent a lot of time in the community talking about health and things that we can do together. Planting seeds, empowering the youth with the bee yard is super important. But we all have a responsibility. So I need some more queen bees, worker bees. I don't know about anybody being an undertaker being here. I hope not. But it is definitely a lot of jobs that we all can fill to make sure that we're ensuring the youth know what bees are. And that's what I spend a lot of my time doing, is empowering the youth. I don't do too many adult classes. I like to really challenge myself and go and get a bunch of third graders to hear me talk about pollen. It's always fun. But one thing that I do see is I think that the kids have the technology to make a change, because varroa mites are real inside of bees. Bees are sick. Their health is declining. And this is not a scary save the bee speech at all. It's just bringing awareness that we do need to take a look at what's going on with the health and genetics of bees, and what role can kids bring in with technology. Like, I think they have a computer in their hand all the time. They can create apps, things that can follow the bee and see, hey, how many flowers did it actually touch? Maybe we can record it. But I think that the technology will be a big part of helping us come up with a way to keep these bees nice and healthy. So that's my hope. And I know a lot of people are really afraid of some of the technology, but I think that that's the bright side, is that there will be some real amazing kids who create a future of technology, meeting bees, that in some kind of way makes sense. So this weekend, don't tell your grandkids and kids to put the phone in the game down. I'm going to advocate for them and say, you can get a little bit more time this weekend. Yeah. So thank you again. Come around and check out everything. And I appreciate you, David, for having me.
Before she gets started, I looked at the map today, and you've been driving to Burning Man out in Nevada for these 12 years.
Yes, yes.
It's about 2,600 miles one way.
Yes, yes.
So 5,200 times 12,
Yeah.
you're looking at about 75,000 miles on multiple vehicles like that. Incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, while I feel like most of you here in the audience probably have heard of bees before tonight, not everyone here will have heard of Burning Man. But those who have heard of it often ask me, isn't that just a bunch of Mad Max wannabes driving around in wacky cars? They'll ask, isn't that just a bunch of weird-looking old hippies not wearing enough clothes? They'll ask, isn't that just a bunch of ravers going in the desert all day? By the way, this is Pink Mammoth. This is my favorite place to dance during the day. They also ask, isn't it just an overrated bucket list item for a bunch of rich weirdos? Well, for those of you with only rumors to go on, I'm here to tell you the true answer, which is yes. Like any city of 70,000 people, Burning Man is not a monolith. It's a galaxy. It's every kind of person, every kind of experience, every expression of our humanity. I have been working this festival for 12 consecutive years, doing art support for large-scale installations. 2024 will be my burn mitzvah, so to speak. So as far as blocks go, I've been around a few. So let's just get down to it. What exactly is this Burning Man thing? Burning Man and its offshoots are beautifully referred to as transformation festivals, which will be clearer at the end of this talk. So for now, let's just say it's Brigadoon. Burning Man is a collective daydream. It's a city of 7 square miles, 2.5 miles across, that appears once per year for a single week in the Black Rock Desert of Nevada, one of the most brutally inhospitable environments in the nation. Features include devastating heat by day, shivering cold at night, and dust storms that swallow the entire world in white. Why then, why would you ever do it? My own friends like to remind me that Burning Man is my very favorite thing to do, to swear that I will never ever do ever again every single year. And that, by the way, is me last year, right the day before the rain came, while I was still wandering around convinced that I was suffering because it was hot. It's not easy. It's not, on balance, even pleasant, but it is a fantasy world driven by our collective need to create, to participate, to build something larger than ourselves, and in so doing, release ourselves from the boundaries and the limitations that serve as our default setting here, where we keep off the grass. We don't climb our neighbor's gazebo. We generally let others tell us what versions of play and at what ages are unseemly. Burning Man wipes that slate clean and gives us art and experience writ into a scale unimaginable until you have stood in it, unduplicatable in any other place or context. It is a thing that can only leave you permanently altered in how you view what's possible in this world, how you view what can be done, what can be built, and what can be given. Step out of grown-up default settings and you might find yourself in a place we who call ourselves burners call home. Suddenly you live in a world where Electra the dragon unfolds LED wings and shoots fire at the sky. Locomotives mate with Victorian houses and skulk around neighborhoods. Shady rhinos have temper tantrums. City buses turn into sharks and prowl. Lines of teapots roll by and invite the adventurous to climb inside to intimate, cushioned parlors. 50-foot chrome lovers wander out of the sunrises, and cockeyed lighthouses give surreal warning of shoals that only they themselves can imagine. You may even have to face the fear beast. Approach this nightmare face and it tells you in an awful voice, you are not worthy of love, and other heartbreaking expressions of self-hate. Get close enough though and you might notice a small child is hidden in its mouth. Touch this child and the monster's tone changes. It tells you, you are amazing. It says, I love you. But first, you have to be brave enough, you have to be curious enough to reach inside. On Playa, because they do call it Playa, you might dance. You might find a dusty piano, and someone might just start to play it and positively blow your mind. Last year, I found a refrigerated inflatable igloo where I lounged with 100 strangers singing Bohemian Rhapsody at the top of our collective lungs, and then someone gave me a snow cone. Of this, I can find no photo, so like all of that art that is burned there and will never exist anywhere again, it's a kind of a statement on the ephemeral nature of beauty and art and experience. But what you can do is walk into any bar and be given a mimosa or a foamy beer or a whiskey drink, as long as you're carrying your own cup, friends. People will call to you like carnival barkers, hoping to gift you bacon or a hot dog or grilled cheese or pancakes. I once spent half an hour taking turns with strangers shaking a giant ice-filled hamster ball to communally churn ice cream in the desert, which we ate together with a glee that suggested we had been on a perilous journey together and arrived safely. Over this madness, a man each year destined to fall in flames is erected to preside over it all. And wondrous, glorious temples rise. These temples will slowly be filled with grief and wishes and the losses and hopes of our community. The favorite hat of a brother lost to cancer, the wedding dress left after a divorce from an abusive spouse symbolically covered in red paint handprints, the collar of a cherished pet, the bronze star of a beloved father who saw both war and great-grandchildren before age itself carried him away, tiny shoes from someone's child taken in the cruelest of all parental fates. Somewhere on a wall will be scrawled a plea for forgiveness that may never be heard. Elsewhere will be the words of someone who has finally found it in themselves to grant forgiveness that may never be acknowledged. And at the end of the week, tens of thousands of people will gather to watch it be set ablaze, and they will sit in silence while the whole thing, every word, every reminder, is simply released into the universe like a prayer. And then, and maybe this sounds like anarchy to you, but anarchy it is not. A set of principles has grown up around this, which are not rules governing laws, but are a reflection of this community, ethos, and culture. These are considered important guidelines, not just for navigating that thing in the desert, but many of us try to carry these ideals of what is possible home with us and try to live more of our lives by the principles which guide the culture of the burn. Though I've given you a taste of what the experience is, you can't understand what the Burning Man really is without understanding this ethos. Without this ethos, it's just a party, and to toss it aside as a party is to miss what this cultural juggernaut really does. The first of these 10 principles is radical inclusion. Anyone is welcome. There's no prerequisite for participation in our community. The second is gifting. This one is always the hardest to explain. It's hard in a world ruled by commerce to let go of the idea of transaction, even just conceptually. But nothing can be bought or sold at Burning Man, except ice as a public safety matter. It's a gifting economy, not barter or trade, and gifts are not necessarily physical objects, though pictured there is a pendant that I made several hundred of last year to give away just to anyone who gave me joy at that event. And this pendant was made by another campmate commemorating the same piece of artwork, but they had a better idea. Our artwork that year was a 23-foot flapping LED butterfly, so hence the butterfly. Gifting can be anything. If you see someone struggling to put up their tent alone, stop and help. That's a gift. If you see someone red in the face, maybe invite them to sit down. Give them a squirt of sunblock. Give them a drink of water. Check in. It is a gift. If your bike chain breaks, or you take a 4x4 to the head and have to have 5 stitches in your face, someone will help you. As long as you, and unless you screw up bad enough that you need a helicopter ride off Playa, and sometimes that does happen, it will be a gift. But let me explain how this math works. Any transactional interaction, buy, barter, trade, it's a zero-sum equation. I give you a thing, it's a +1 for you. You give me a thing back, and it's a -1 for you. The sum is 0. But if you have a blister, and I see you limping, and I give you a Band-Aid, you get a +1. I gave you something you needed. I gave you an act of caring. I get to see that you were happy and know that I have helped, and that's a +1 for me. And so now we're working with an equation that is a +2. Do you see how that magic works? Yes, of course, this cannot function in the outside world, but for our time there, this is what we are striving to do. But do not underestimate how developing this habit changes you. You come home with a greater capacity for generosity, for openness to others, willingness to pay closer attention to small things that are in your power and how they may change the things around you. The third principle is decommodification. We try to protect our culture from exploitation by providing an environment free of sponsorship, branding, and advertising. Sometimes people even playfully change prominent logos on rental vehicles in creative and funny ways. The intent is to discourage the substitution of consumption for experience. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt is not what this is for. The fourth principle is radical self-reliance. A driving principle of the event is to encourage yourself, an individual, to discover, exercise, and rely upon your own resources. On a simplistic surface, this means plan and prepare, so I usually illustrate with my overloaded van, but I thought it better to show my actual camp the day the unprecedented rain came. Surely you heard about it. There was a great deal of schadenfreude in the press. But the principle of self-reliance is why we were so prepared to take care of ourselves and others that during the crisis, President Biden offered to send the National Guard to save us from the catastrophe, and the leadership of Burning Man said, no thanks, we're okay. Less obvious is that this is also about more than physical resources. Learning to exercise and rely on your own resources also means this. This tower is about 75 feet tall. It's easy to climb, but presents a great danger if you're careless. You can be gravely hurt. The reward at the top was beautiful, clear views for miles, people giddy and filled with fellowship. But first, you have to find the resources inside of yourself to tackle this. The scary climb, or the work of the burn, or the confidence to create, or the preparation to sit out an unprecedented situation while eating like kings and having enough left to share with people who are still learning what any of this means. The fifth principle is radical self-expression. You and only you or your collaborating group can determine the content of your individuality, your expression of self, or what you offer the community, as long as you are respecting the rights and liberties of others. The sixth is communal effort. We value cooperation and collaboration. The public spaces, the works of art, the experiences of the playa are entirely dependent on community interaction and communal labor. And by the way, this is a crew I worked on called Mega Cake. I'll mention it later. I'm the one pointing the impact driver directly at the lens. The seventh principle is civic responsibility. We do get portrayed a bit as anarchy, which, okay, I know what the pictures look like. I know how people write about it. A Nobel Prize winning economist visited Burning Man to study how the development of burner culture could possibly affect the future of urban planning. The New York Times, a seat of serious journalism, wrote about this and used the word orgy 4 times in the first half of the article. So I get it, I know. But our seventh principle is that we value a civil society. We value public welfare and responsibility. We endeavor to keep each other safe, and we know that keeping each other safe requires participation. It requires stepping in, and it requires a respect of state, local, and national laws. The eighth principle is leave no trace. There are no trash cans at Burning Man. Every gum wrapper or pistachio shell you bring in, all of the trash you create, is your responsibility alone, and it must be taken back out with you. These are not just federal lands that are permitted to us for the event. These are tribal lands, and they are sacred to the native Paiute tribe that still live in the surrounding area. When the event is over, people walk shoulder to shoulder across the entire 7 square miles and pick up every lost screw, loose sequin, drop bottle cap. A month after Burning Man is over, you cannot tell it was there. And not only do they do this restoration, the volunteers who do it record to the foot where they found trash, small or large, and Burning Man puts out a map that looks like this. This is called a MOOP map. The green areas were clear of debris. Yellow was carelessly done and small things were found left there in the soil. Red are large, egregious items, someone who left whole trash bags or abandoned unwanted equipment. Every burner can see this and knows which camps violated the principle. Poor performing camps might not be invited back. The ninth principle is immediacy. Burning Man exists to break down the barriers that stand between us and our experiences, ourselves and the moments we live in. The last of these principles that drive Burning Man is participation. We believe in the radically transformative nature of achieving through doing. Everyone is invited to work. Everyone is invited to play. And so we have arrived to the claim I started with, Transformation Festival. And if you still don't see how this works, when I stepped into the dust 12 years ago, I did it as a chubby, over-the-hill housewife staring down my last truly useful days with kids on the downhill slide to college, making their own sandwiches and doing their own laundry, sapping away all I'd really been good for most of my adult life. The burn took me right where I was. The burn taught me to see myself as vital and capable again. The burn picked me up when I fell off stuff, and it comforted me when I broke down and cried, and it transformed me into a person who participates, who builds, who builds things like these. This is Char Wash, my first project. It's a 26-foot dome. There's a small, some people in the center, and it's built on a touchless car wash. These arms spin and make designs in the fire around the people in the center, only about 5 feet away. So if you're inside, it's very visceral. You hear shush, 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 shush as it goes by. Then I went to Atlanta, and I helped build this art car called the Infinite Infant, which I have nothing to say about. Next one. And then we built Firmament. Firmament is a 50-foot star-shaped canopy of 21,600 LEDs suspended 12 feet off the ground from a 42-foot tower. It plays classical music and makes patterns in these beautiful lights. Then we built Paraluna, which is a 28-foot spinning disc of 48 spokes. And it works on persistence of vision. So basically it's spinning so fast that your eye perceives the animation, so it appears to have animations in the sky. And then I participated in building my first temple. A lot of people didn't like this temple. It was a little plain, but I love it, and I'm going to tell you why. Because the architect, as you can see, it's a gradiated set of tori, but there's a gap in the center. And the architect of this temple said that he built it this way because every one of us in our lives, for good or bad, has something in our lives that separates our lives from the before and the after, and that gap is representative of the thing that each of us has. And I loved that idea. This is called the Shrine of Sympathetic Resonance. It was built from piano sounding boards, so in the wind it would sing to you, but you could also play it, you could pluck it, you could hammer it. I built all of those roof pieces that are the triangles with the nonagons inside. This is called Mega Cake, which I mentioned earlier, which was a big deal for me. This was built in Roanoke. It's a 4-story observation tower with a spiral slide that goes down the center. But what's important about this for me is that Mega Cake was my first introduction to pyro. I learned to run fuses to time and create pyrotechnic shows, and was one of 4 people that created the pyrotechnic show together and then installed it inside on the last day and set it off and to burn the thing down. And then this is what we had this year. This is called Mariposa, and it is a 23-foot butterfly that, and if you sit on the porch swing under it, you rock on the porch swing, the wings slowly flap. All of that, and if you ask me really, really nice, I might even marry you on playa. But if I do, you can be assured that first, I'm going to help you build that wedding chapel.
Now, thank you very much. It's that glorious time of the evening when we open up the floor to questions. And I would like to invite both the speakers up. Christine, Samantha. Time for the Q&A. I'm going to hand this. Where's the other microphone?
Right here.
Working on it.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Is that working?
Yep. Hello? Yep. Oh, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I'll hand this off. We're going to give this to. We'll give this to the who's ever asking, and you guys can share one. So that works for you.
See, I thought I got all the way to the end without having a stroke, and I was done.
They asked me
Yes.
to lift that up for the Q&A. So, questions? Right. Here you go.
That's a lot of building and burning. Where do you get the money to pay for all that?
The large-scale art projects, most of the ones that I've worked on they're called honorariums, and so part of the Burning Man ticket price goes to grants to pay for some of those to be built, but they are actually way more expensive than the grants, and so the artists and the crews themselves raise money or donate money. And as far as where I get the money to drive out there and set up my crap and come back home, thank you, my beautiful husband. I love you so much.
Next question. Terry.
So, I just want to ask you both, are there any analogies that can be made between the bees and the culture of Burning Man?
Ooh, I'd love to answer that, but I think by law we're required not to have anything to do with each other for the purposes of this exercise.
Not for the Q&A.
Oh, not for the Q&A. Do you have?
Burning Man is different for me. I think it went out. It's different for me looking at it. The only thing that I can possibly think of, and I'm a bit of a big thinker, is the smoke when you're using a smoker and the bees, and you're using that as a way to calm the bee down. And that sounds like a lot of what people are going out there to do in their own way. I might like to get a couple things, but that was different. That was different for me. But I think the correlation, the analogy that I would find would be smoke, which is actually one of the most beautiful parts of all of it with the beekeeping, because it is a spiritual part of the process for me. When I think about smoke, I think about my ancestors and native people and how it's used to cleanse the space. And they clean up afterwards. So there you go.
I'd have gone straight for communal effort.
I would add in the idea of community as well, which is really important to both those two areas.
I'm just curious what else is happening on the farm.
The farm has been a bit different today. Of course, when I went outside before I came here, guess what? Another hive was trying to rob another hive. Of all days, it's January, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And it's the minute they see you put on these boots, I think they know. And they say, let's do something a little bit different. And then, people, when you're going to an event, they don't really realize what the farm life it can be like because, I could come out and I'm like, wait, is that a swarm in a tree or is that goat in labor? And things change so fast. So I try to be a quick thinker all the time. So I went out and I put a sheet over that hive so they couldn't smell the honey inside of it. And you gotta think fast. These bees are really working me. I mean, they make me think quite a bit. So the January robin was interesting because I'm trying to figure out what does that correlate with the weather, because bees tell you a lot about the weather, and that was completely different. And I did see a bunch of pollen. They were like loaded with pollen, which I have no idea where they went and found that out is the second question. Where did all the pollen come from? So something's out there. Goats, working on a new kitchen space for the products. Teaching, I just came back from Tennessee. I was teaching over at the Hive Life Conference, which was a big deal for me because, as you can imagine, I was the only Black woman that was there to talk and probably at the whole conference. And before I came in my bio, it said food justice, and everybody freaked out. I don't think they ever heard that word before. So I had to explain to them that it wasn't about just one group of people. It was about the fact that everybody is eating food and items that are produced that are hurting us. It's not a justice for one group. Justice needs to be for everybody because we all deserve to have the basic necessities. So I conquered that group and they were like, all hugs, and it was different. And guess what, at the end, I think they actually like me.
I didn't know bees robbed bees.
They do.
Oh my gosh.
You should see it. It's an interesting thing. It's probably one of the most human traits you would think that they would have would be the robbing, which is a bit different. But so they want to take the resources. But the thing about it that gets really interesting is they go and they fight each other and they get these little balls and they just spin around. And I mean, they go at it and you can just see the little stingers and they bend. And it's brutal. And I just want to take their wings and say, get off of her and stop. Just go. And one thing that I find myself doing a lot of is, of course, the motherly, maternal instinct is I want to keep feeding them stuff. So I want to keep going out and it's like I want to put a little snack there. Are you hungry? Are you tired? Can I tuck you in? Is it, what can I do? And that maternal instinct, I think, is like so important with bees because you have intuition. Because if I would not have went out there today, what led me there? But anyway, my instinct led me out there and I stopped a bee robbery.
Well, the next question might be for you. I love that.
My question, I've got two of them, one for each of you. I read that hive collapse was real prominent this year, and have they found a reason for it other than mites?
Okay, so like I said, you can get into those big, long, save to be tangents. It can become a lot. And I would say the mites are a part of it, but from my experience and what I'm seeing, I'm starting to think it's the genetics. The genetics have gone way out there, especially if you know what is everybody doing, they're breeding bees to sell them, right? So what happens if you just keep breeding them over and over, I breed goats, so I know that there's things called like line breeding and ways that you breed for genetics. But they're not doing that. It's a totally commercialized thing. They're coming down with trucks and trucks and trucks to sell bees, and they're in it to make money. So I think the genetics has gone a bit wacky with the Italian honeybee because that's generally what we see in North Carolina. The Russian bees I found them to be a little bit more tolerant to the varroa mites. But I think the mites are getting out of control because of the weather. You're going hot, you're going cold. When something gets warm, what happens? You start getting bugs. Stuff starts appearing inside of that hive. And the second thing that happens in there, besides the varroa mites, are the wax moths. They're just as bad in the hive beetle. So it's like you're on a constant fight, and it's hard to have a completely natural beehive. So I've started doing a bit of research, and I've learned with gardening that what do bugs hate? They hate spice. They hate pepper. So I've started trying to use pepper inside of my oil of oregano to treat. And the thing about it, you got to start thinking of it as a research and comparison, because you would be disappointed. I would be crying every season and every day if I didn't, because it's a lot that you can lose. And colony collapse is something that definitely has gotten worse. And I don't know if it's going to get better until we can get a genetic that is strong. We need a strong new gene that's going to be tolerant to all areas.
Thank you. My other question was for the Burning Man. How many days does it take? Well, this year I know it rained and turned it into a rather large mud hole. How long does it take from the time it ends till you actually are done cleaning up and restoring?
Gotcha. Okay. I'm going to layer this answer. The event itself is 9 days. I called it a week, but it's 9 days. Me myself, I'm gone. I'm on Playa about 2 weeks, from build to strike. Although I'm gone from North Carolina about 3 because I have to cross with the equipment. And then long time after I'm gone, the restoration crews are there. They'll spend about a month putting it back, kind of going through the whole thing and cleaning up any burn scars. Like, the things that burn, it affects the surface, and they will clean those scars up and look for all of the things left behind, and it'll take about a month.
Okay, I have a question for Burning Man also. I'm back here. I am in a women's group, and I'm hoping in 2025 to go for the first time myself and take a group of women. Can you tell me what the best resource would be for us to start planning and putting that trip together?
BurningMan.org is the Burning Man's website, and they have a ton of survival guides. And they'll tell you, everything that you need to, what to watch out for, what you need, it's an excellent preparation guide. And I myself, when I was preparing for my first Burning Man, I of course started there, but I watched a million videos on YouTube, people talking about their first experiences. I pulled up a million articles that people had written about experiences, and sort of tried to learn as much as I could through other people's successes and failures, and of course Burning Man's official survival guide before I went.
Hey, I have a question about Burning Man, and
Okay.
as it relates, you mentioned earlier that it's the start of Black History Month, so I'm kind of curious what's been done. The ding that you hear in the press a lot is that it's a rich white guy's place. Are there ways to encourage folks to diversify it, people that can't afford to go, scholarships, anything like that?
That is, there are a lot of answers to that. That's a multi-part. The answer is yes. Burning Man has typically been a very white event, but we as an organization have been really working to change that. And it's not a thing that will happen overnight because in some ways Burning Man is viral. So, I go and I say this is the greatest thing I've ever done, and I want to make 10 of my friends go. Well, if 80% of my friends are white, then 8 of my 10 friends are going to be white when they show up. And so we need to get more and more burners of color there. We've been working on it. There's been a lot of success, and in fact, not this past year, but 2023, one of the things that they did was they focused on the art of burners of color, to encourage burners of color to come and to step forward into the roles that sometimes people feel like they can't play. And as far as scholarships, Burning Man does have a low price. I mean, there's a scaled tickets, and if you're P. Diddy, you can you buy these very expensive tickets, and then you kind of get the regular sale tickets, and then there are about, do you know how many? There's like 1,200 tickets that go on sale at the end, and you can kind of apply for the scholarship to apply for these tickets. The low, but it's it's 1,200, so something like that. Oh, sorry. Yes. What? Sorry, I forgot to throw in that there are when you do art at Burning Man. You're right. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. When you do art at Burning Man, you are awarded a certain number of tickets for your camp because you have to assure that you will get your essential personnel in. And so if you are working on an art project, and you are, you will get free. I haven't paid for any of my 12 tickets, so because I work like a horse.
Firstly, I want to thank both of you for donating your most valuable asset of all, and that's your time, for everything you do. This was lovely. B lady.
Samantha.
Samantha B. How many, what percentage of honeybees do not produce honey?
That's a really good question because, when I look at that question, it's one of the most prominent things when you look at history because what do we always talk about is native bees, right? So when I look at that, they have this picture that is painted that the European honeybee is the only bee that makes the honey, which doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But we do have the bee in the Yucatan. They're stingless. It's stingless, but it does produce honey. So right now, some information is missing. I think it's a little bit of missing information because it's hard for me to believe, even in North Carolina because it's so productive. Like what is everywhere in North Carolina is flowers and plants, the biodiversity. If you go to an area that is just rich, even Africa, it's rich. The land is fertile. There's something, every little square inch, something is growing there. So when I see that, and I'll just say the European honeybee was brought here to make beeswax for candles and not produce honey. So it had to be potentially a bee that, maybe it's an undercover bee that we just haven't, they don't want us to know about because maybe that honey is just a little bit sweeter. But it brings in a little bit of mystery because you wonder, North Carolina has over 500 native bees. And so besides the pollination, where's the honey? And what would that lead us to have to do? We just have to buy the honey. And I hope this is not sounding like a big conspiracy theory, but it just makes me go, I'm just curious, like, where are the other honey producers? The only one, like I say, I can find the stingless bee, and they're tiny. Have you all ever seen those before? They almost look like little ants. They're real small. They don't sting, and they can like get all up in your hair. And they're really some amazing. And they make this wax, and it looks like a brain cell. It's just different. than what we see with the European bee and how it operates. So what happens, and this is what I always think of, it's like gardening. If you have the honeybee that they brought here, what happens when you bring something in? Something else comes right behind that, and then that's when you start getting a little problems in the garden, right? When you start adding stuff in, then you start getting some issues going on. So definitely don't forget about the native bees. I wanted to mention that too. Please understand that native bees are super important. Like I said, we are housing over 500 and something native bees here. So remember how important that role is for North Carolina preserving culture and biodiversity.
500 varieties of native bees? That's amazing.
Let's
Sorry.
give a big round of applause for Christine and Samantha. Thank you very much. I had a couple of comments for both of you, and that is that in terms of Christine and talking about the playa, there's 7 square miles of desert that's out there, and there's some 400 plus art installations. As she showed, some of them are 2 to 3 stories tall that you don't even see when you're out there. There's no road map. There's no vehicles other than the official mutant art cars that you saw. You have to jump on a bicycle and go out in the playa and experience these things. You can climb over on top of anything, get along with it. And for Samantha, we did an installation with an artist named Garnet Hewitt when I was in Cincinnati, the Contemporary Art Center there. And Garnet works with bees. And we drilled a hole through about 10 inches of stone wall, inserted tubes, and he brought his bees in. And he creates a beginning of a membrane that typically is like a human figure. And the bees are his partners. And they go out during the day, then they come back on in, and they build the sculpture for us in the museum. It was absolutely fascinating. It's a wonderful way to sort of mix those two together. So that's it for tonight, folks. Thanks for coming, and safe travels home.
Thank you.